Amazing. I mean, it's a good conversation. I think we have to think of it. There's a few things that we have to think about. First of all, the one thing, the underlying premise of everything is that there is only one force in the universe. There's only one force. There's only Hashem. That's the underlying principle of all this whole conversation. And a lot of the conversation, the Rishonim, to just understand it in terms of its historical understanding, a lot of the conversation of Rishonim, whether we do believe in Mazal, don't believe in Mazal, or Mazal has an effect, it doesn't have an effect. And even going back to the Gemaras, whether a Mazal Yisrael or there is Mazal, is whether there's some type of power to these forces. Does the Zodiac have some type of power? But if we really strip it to its real essence, we'll say like this. But in essence, there is only one force that's called Hashem. There's only one force. There's only one force. However, Hashem's light, the oil that comes from Hashem, is refracted and revealed to us in this world through many different things. In the mashal of it's even a mashal in the Gemara where it talks about how many shchinas are there, and it's a mashal. It's a big light that's coming through different screens, or like the Ramaks uses this image of like different bowls, colored bowls. There's like a blue bowl, a green bowl, a yellow bowl, and each vase has a different color to it. But the water in the bowl is actually the same water. But when you look from the outside, you see blue water, yellow water, and green water. So the koyach Ein Sofi is the koyach of Hashem in this world is one, but it's refracted into different vessels. Vessels create different type of shades, different colors. The colors is what we call like the particular type of sphera. So you'll say there's a revealing of chesed in this world, or a revealing of gevur in this world, Hashem's power, or Hashem's strength, or Hashem's kindness, which is really the one light that's being refracted through this medium that's allowing for the revelation of Hashem's light as chesed, or as gevura, or as tiferes, whatever is being experienced at that moment. So the way we look at the world is there is multiple factors that create the context of our birth and the context of our life, which means when a person walks out, when a person is walking in the street, the sun is shining, the grass is green, there's a deer walk. I don't know, whatever the landscape of this person's person walking on this meadow, this person's experiencing Hashem's light through the medium of the grass, of the sun, of the animals, everything that's being revealed to this person at this present moment. So it's not that these forces have an independent power, but it does affect you. In other words, when the sun is shining, usually people feel much better, I'm not saying for better or for worse, but usually people feel much better when the sun is shining versus when it's a cloudy day or it's raining. People feel more introverted when it's raining and more extroverted when the sun is shining, which means that there's a certain quality, a certain frequency, a certain type of energy in the world that Hashem is revealing during this present moment. When it's raining, there's a certain presence of Hashem's revelation that's coming through the rain. And therefore, that revelation that's coming through the rain that's called the Mazal. The Mazal is the influences that we have in our life. So everything is technically a type of Mazal. If a person is born, on the deeper understanding of this, when a person is born, and Chazal say that a person is born, let's say on Friday, is different than a person that's born on Wednesday. Because the quality of the world on Wednesday is different than the quality of the world on Erev Shabbos. On a level of the spheres, there's like a sphere that's revealed on the level of on Wednesday, and there's a sphere that's revealed on the level of Friday. Therefore, people's consciousness, in general, just by a person being awake to this world, feels differently on a Sunday than on a Monday, and on a Tuesday than on a Wednesday, and on a Thursday and a Friday. Every day a person feels differently because there's a certain context that gives rise to the person's awareness and consciousness during this time period. And every single moment is differently. There's a difference between the morning, and there's a difference between the evening, there's a difference in the afternoon, and there's a difference something between the middle of the night. There's a different quality that's created. There's a different quality that's being generated from the makar, from the source, that's being refracted into all these vessels, that's giving rise to the particularity of this present moment. So
You
in
call
Chazal,
it energy or light? What is that? Different
that's the
energy?
shefa, that's Mazal. That's the
Okay.
Mazal. That's the Mazal of the moment. There's a certain Mazal of that moment. The Mazal is a good Mazal, a negative Mazal. You know, your Mishana Mazal, the place that you're living has some toxic energy for some reason. Maybe is by association, maybe by the colors of the house, maybe by the structures, maybe by the way the rooms are shaped. It gives rise to a certain type of response, a certain resonance that you respond to that way in a certain way, because it's giving rise to that type of consciousness. And the truth is that in a very deep level, this is what Chazal are saying. So again, what the Rambam is really dismissing Mazalas outright and saying it's like shtusim ba'avalim, it's like it's
Right.
nonsense and things. The Rambam is actually talking about saying that they have independent power. They don't have independent power, and whoever thinks that is just a fool.
Right.
They're absolutely nothing. It's just Einem Ovad. It's only Hashem's power. But the Rambam, of course, agrees, and the Rambam actually writes this in Hilchos Deis, that a person is affected by his environment, for better or for worse. Which means that if you live in a certain condition where people think a certain way, you're going to automatically start thinking that same way. If you're living in a certain condition that the sun is shining, there's a reason why certain creativity happens in certain states or certain countries, and certain creativity happens in other countries. It's not just a coincidence. There's a whole bigger context that gives rise to people living in environments that are constantly changing. For example, people are a lot more creative than people live in an environment when the weather is always the same. There's something about that. And the same thing also similar with a person that's born. When Chazal are talking about, the sages are talking about when a person is born on this day, they can have an aggressive quality because they're under influence of that Mazal. Which means the context of the person's birth brought about this type of, in the very early stages of the human development, it brought about these types of rising of these type of qualities within the person, and therefore causes this person to be more inclined towards these types of actions. So this is the effect of the entire everything of life, the entire context of our life where we're living through. Now the question becomes, do we live just in the effect of that, or do we live as a participator in that quality, in the context that we're created, and in participation in dialogue with that context? There's two options here. The first option seems to be, which is I'm bigger than that, which is a Mazal. So that's the simple interpretation. Is like maybe yes, culturally, environmentally, genetically, everything in the context of my life would really dictate that my life should look in a particular way, but I have my free choice, which I can rise above that and choose to be differently. And that's what we say to a person has bechira, because a person is really connected to the oil itself, to the source of the light, not the light the way it's being revealed as a particular thing, and therefore you're in the effect of that revelation of the light, but you're actually connected to the oil, that the ayin is Mazal Yisrael. We're connected to the ayin, which is the light before it has any form, before it has any tzura, which is like in the image of Ramosha Kadavera, the image of Ramak, it's like the clean water or the pure water before it's placed into any of the vessels, or even while it's placed into the vessel. Because we're not looking at it from the outside, we're actually connected to it from the inside. If the inside is all pure water, whether the water, that's why Chlif D'Chtayo, this possibility is the same light moving into different vessels, because you're connected to the light. And in the light, there's only one. So when you say that Ayin Mazal Yisrael, we're connected to the place of the Ayin, we actually project differently and be not just in the effect, but we can actually be the cause. But then there's something even deeper, which is the way Chazal actually describe this, the way the sages in the Gemara describe this being under this influence, is that, part of real growth is not to fight yourself, is not to diminish who you are because of the context that you were created from, which means your environment, your culture, your genetics, etc. Like we said, was talking before that Lech Lecha, that Avram was told Lech Lecha to leave, and Lech Lecha means to go to yourself, to become, like the Zohar says, Lecha, alone, like the Baditva says, alone by yourself, to become yourself. And the way you do that is through from the place of your artzcha, the place of your land, which also corresponds to your rotzen and your genetics, and the place of your emotions, which is on one level, it's like a sort of a break from that. In order for you to become whole, you have to break from that state. That's like, I would say, maybe stage one, but ultimately, Lech Lecha means go to yourself, means mi'artzecha, from that place of the place of you where you're born, from Meiladecha, not move away from it, but come from that place itself, like the inclusion of that. And that's why Chazal, when they talk about this, very interestingly, when it talks about a person, let's say, born under a certain influence, which means that the context of this life, of this person's life, he's born on Wednesday, whatever the day was that Chazal talk about, but a person's born in this life, and usually this person has an inclination towards blood, whatever. So this person could either be, God forbid, a murderer, or if he really wants to transform himself, it's not to become completely somebody that doesn't have that inclination, but it's to direct it in a healthy way. And the way Chazal interpret this and say that this person will become a shoichet. So in other words, the person is actually using his own artzacha, his own place of where he's coming from, and he's channeling. And that's really what it means, Ein Mazal Yisrael, on a deeper level. That means that there's no Mazal to Yisrael, which means when a person connects with the ayin of the Mazal, the ayin is the bilti tzura, the lack of form of the Mazal, then they could project themselves into in the tzura exactly the way. So it's just a mishnah tzura. You're transfigure. You're manipulating sort of, instead of it being this way, you're creating a new tziruf. You're creating a new combination where you're using the same building blocks that would have created something of you and would have created you to be in a particular way. And you're not saying I'm not that, but you're saying I can be that in a healthy way, and I can direct it. And that's what the idea of the chachmas hatziruf, the wisdom of tziruf, of combination, is really to learn how to create the healthy combinations. To take what the Baal Shem Tov calls the shviras oisius, the breaking of letters, where there's no healthy combinations, where the combinations are used in a very negative way, and to create in a positive way. And that's what I think when we think about the word of Mazal, it's not a very abstract, archaic idea of people believing in the Zodiac or some type of, new age thing of someone believing that you're born on the Arius, this is your quality, and this is your life is going to unfold. It's yes and no. It's not true on one level, and it's utterly true on the other level. It's not true because that doesn't have an effect on you. That's not the cause. The cause is because the koyach ein soif, the Hashem's power, was revealed in the month of Nisan, for example, which is the month of the beginning of the spring, gives rise to what we translate what spring is, which is a month of freedom, and a month of going out of Egypt, and a month and connected with the Arius. So it's all interconnected, but the root of that idea is because there's now a shefa, there's now a flow, divine flow, that's coming through during this time period that shows up in everything that Nisan represents, and everything that this month represents. I was saying before that there's an idea of like Elul is a month of cheshbon hanefesh. A person is doing an accounting for the soul and thinking about the new coming year and Rosh Hashanah, and that's true on a physical level as well. Whether you're conscious or not that there's Rosh Hashanah, there's a certain sense of apprehension and a certain sense of uncertainty, how it's going to unfold every time a new year begins. So when you're going, even if you're living in an agricultural society, you're entering into the fall, into the winter. You're not sure whether you're going to have potatoes for the coming year. Are you going to starve, or are you going to actually survive? And it's not l'shav. It's not just a random coincidence that the Torah says that that's the time of judgment, because that is the time of judgment. That is actually, it's all working consistently as one system. And Elul is a time of introspection and figuring things out. It's all part of the same system, which is this the divine revelation, Hashem's revelation in this world, in this time period, shows up in the seasons of the year, shows up in the trees, shows up in the grass, shows up in life. And when we resonate with that, we can, again, do two things. Either we can take it and say we're beyond it, or we can actually say maybe that we can transfer it into a holy place. So if you're having apprehension because you don't know if you're going to have enough potatoes for the year, well, maybe you should be thinking about your life of the coming year, because there's going to be a judgment. And that's really the real question. Not just about your potatoes, but like, what am I doing in this world? And that's really the cheshbon hanefesh. So you're taking what's happening anyways, and you're transferring it into a healthy way, into a way that you're actually serving Hashem through this way. And that's really ultimately what the whole idea of why there is that quality in this world this time. It's because Hashem is revealing to us a certain quality in this world, so we can connect to Hashem in this way during this particular time. And I think that's the way we have to think about Mazal in a much more broader sense. And then